massive alien warship appeared above Earth without warning, blocking out the stars like a giant shadow hanging over the planet. Panic spread across every nation as people watched the enormous black fleet slowly move into orbit. Cities stopped moving. Airports closed. Military alarms echoed across the world. Inside the command center buried deep beneath Seoul, Captain J. Park stood silently beside Commander Yuna Kim, while screens showed hundreds of alien ships surrounding Earth. No one in the room had ever seen technology like this before. The ships were larger than mountains, covered in dark metal with glowing red lines stretching across their hulls like veins. Then the message arrived. A deep voice filled every communication channel on Earth at once. This world now belongs to the imperial throne of King Vaelor. Surrender peacefully, and your species may survive as servants. The message repeated again and again in every human language. Fear spread quickly, but anger spread even faster. Jay watched world leaders arguing across live military feeds while billions waited for an answer. Some wanted surrender. Others wanted war. Yuna looked at the alien fleet with cold eyes. If they wanted peace, she whispered, they would not arrive with weapons. Hours later, Earth answered the Empire with a single message. Humanity refused to kneel. The aliens responded immediately. One of the giant warships moved over the Atlantic Ocean and fired a beam of blue light into the sea. The explosion created waves taller than buildings and sent storms crashing toward nearby coasts. Millions watched the attack live. It was not just a warning. It was humiliation. King Vaelor wanted Earth to understand its weakness before the invasion began. Across the galaxy, the Empire was feared for exactly this reason. Entire civilizations surrendered after seeing one demonstration of imperial power. The Empire had ruled for thousands of years, crushing worlds that resisted and enslaving surviving populations. To the aliens, humanity was just another species waiting to be conquered. But the Empire misunderstood humans from the very beginning. Instead of breaking Earth's spirit, the attack united it. Nations that hated each other for centuries suddenly stood together. Old wars ended overnight. Factories reopened. Hidden military projects were activated. Deep beneath mountains, deserts, and oceans, secret human shipyards came alive. Humanity had prepared for alien life long before first contact ever happened. Jay was among the few officers trusted with those secrets. 3 years earlier, human explorers had discovered destroyed alien ruins near Saturn. Inside the ruins, scientists found evidence of an ancient war that had wiped out an advanced species. More importantly, they found weapons. Human engineers spent years studying the technology in silence while governments publicly denied everything. Now those secret projects became humanity's final hope. Yuna escorted Jay through one of the underground hangars beneath the Korean mountains, where massive warships rested in darkness. The ships looked different from alien vessels. Human designs were rough, sharp, and brutal. They were not built to impress. They were built to survive. Workers rushed across metal bridges while engines roared like thunder deep inside the walls. Jay stared at the largest ship in the hangar. "How many are ready?" he asked quietly. Yuna folded her arms. "Enough to make them bleed." Above Earth, King Vaelor watched humanity's refusal with amusement from his golden throne aboard the imperial flagship. The alien king was enormous compared to humans, wearing dark armor decorated with silver markings from conquered worlds. His generals warned him that humans were behaving strangely. Most species begged for mercy after seeing imperial fleets. Humans were building defenses instead. Vaelor only laughed. He believed fear would eventually break them. He ordered his fleets to begin destroying Earth's outer colonies first. The attacks started 2 days later. Human mining stations near Jupiter disappeared in fire. Colonies on distant moons stopped responding one by one. Refugee ships flooded back toward Earth carrying horrifying stories of alien soldiers burning entire cities and executing civilians in public. Jay listened to survivors describe the attacks while rage slowly replaced his fear. One little girl sat alone in a hospital after losing her parents during the destruction of Callisto Station. She looked up at Jay with tears in her eyes and asked one question. "Why do they hate us?" Jay had no answer. As days passed, the alien fleet slowly moved closer to Earth. Every expert believed humanity would lose. The Empire controlled thousands of systems while humans had barely explored their own region of space. But hidden across the solar system, human fleets quietly prepared traps. Yuna supervised stealth ships hiding among asteroid fields near Saturn. Engineers loaded experimental weapons onto small attack vessels. Human commanders knew direct battle was impossible. The Empire had more ships, more soldiers, and stronger technology. So humans planned something different. They planned to become monsters the Empire could not predict. On the 7th day after first contact, Vaelor sent another message to Earth demanding surrender before the invasion began. This time humanity answered with silence. The alien king smiled and ordered his fleets toward the planet. Thousands of ships began moving through the darkness together like a wall covering the stars. Inside Earth's defense command, tension filled every room. Jay stood beside Yuna while countdowns flashed across giant screens. "Do you think this will work?" one officer asked nervously. Yuna did not answer immediately. She watched the enemy fleet move deeper into the trap zone near Saturn. Finally, she spoke softly. "No empire survives forever." The moment the alien fleet crossed the marked coordinates, human forces activated hidden gravity mines buried inside Saturn's rings months earlier. Space itself seemed to twist apart. Explosions erupted across the darkness as entire alien ships vanished instantly. Shockwaves tore through the Imperial formation. Before the Empire could react, hundreds of hidden human stealth ships attacked from every direction. Missiles slammed into confused alien cruisers, while rail cannons fired streams of metal through enemy hulls. Human pilots moved with terrifying speed, striking hard before disappearing back into the rings. The Empire had never faced enemies willing to fight this way. Alien commanders screamed orders while their formation collapsed into chaos. On Earth, billions watched live battle feeds in disbelief as burning alien ships drifted across Saturn's orbit. For the first time in centuries, the Imperial fleet was losing. Vaelor rose from his throne in fury as reports flooded into his flagship. Entire warships were gone. Human attacks continued without stopping. The alien king crushed a metal console with his bare hand. "Destroy them!" he roared at his generals. But the battle only became worse. Human ships targeted engines, communications, and supply carriers instead of fighting honorably. They fought like hunters attacking a giant beast piece by piece. By the time the surviving alien fleet escaped Saturn's rings, nearly a third of the invasion force had vanished. Across the galaxy, news of the defeat spread rapidly. Worlds enslaved by the Empire whispered the impossible truth to each other. Humans had made the Empire bleed. Inside the damaged Imperial flagship, Vaelor stared silently at the burning wreckage drifting through space. His generals expected rage, but the king looked something far more dangerous: humiliation. Meanwhile, deep beneath Earth's surface, Jay and Yuna walked through crowded command halls filled with cheering soldiers and exhausted workers. Humanity had survived the first battle, but both of them understood the truth. The Empire would return stronger and angrier than before. This was only the beginning of a war that would shake the entire galaxy. As alarms suddenly echoed across the command center again, a new transmission appeared from deep space. Another Imperial fleet was approaching Earth, and this one was twice the size of the first. The news of humanity's victory near Saturn spread across Earth like wildfire, but celebration did not last long because the second Imperial fleet was already moving through deep space toward the solar system. This new fleet was larger, darker, and far more dangerous than the first one. Thousands of alien warships stretched across the stars like an endless storm. King Vaelor no longer saw humanity as a weak species. Now he saw humans as a threat that needed to be erased completely. Inside the Imperial flagship, Vaelor stood silently before a giant hologram showing the solar system. His generals waited nervously around him while damaged ships from the first battle slowly drifted outside the massive windows. "No more mercy," Vaelor said coldly. "Burn their cities. Destroy their oceans. Leave nothing alive." Far away on Earth, Captain J. Park listened to the intercepted transmission with a heavy expression. The room around him became silent. Even experienced officers looked shaken after hearing the alien king's orders. Yuna Kim stepped beside him and crossed her arms. "Then we hit them first," she said calmly. Humanity understood something important after the first battle. The Empire depended on fear, control, and overwhelming force. Their fleets were powerful, but they fought with pride and strict formation. Humans fought differently. Human commanders adapted quickly, attacked without warning, and used every weakness they could find. Deep inside hidden bases beneath Mars, human scientists studied alien technology recovered from destroyed ships near Saturn. Dr. Eun Choi worked day and night beside engineers trying to unlock the secrets of imperial shields and weapons. She barely slept anymore. Her eyes were red from exhaustion as she examined strange alien energy cores floating inside containment chambers. One night, she discovered something hidden inside the Empire's systems. Imperial ships shared battle information through a central communication network. If the network failed, alien fleets became slower and confused. When Eun explained the discovery to military leaders, the entire strategy of the war changed instantly. Humanity would stop fighting fleets directly. They would hunt the Empire's eyes and ears instead. Jay gathered his officers aboard the human battleship Black Dawn, while fleets quietly moved through the darkness beyond Jupiter. Unlike Imperial ships, human vessels stayed hidden as much as possible. Their engines produced little heat, making them difficult to detect. Jay stood before the crew with a serious expression. "We cannot win by fighting their strength," he told them. "So we destroy what holds their empire together." Across the solar system, human stealth ships began launching secret attacks. Small teams slipped behind enemy lines and targeted communication relays, fuel carriers, and supply stations. Human soldiers moved fast and disappeared before the Empire could respond. Near Neptune, Commander Yuna led one of the most dangerous missions of the war. Her team infiltrated an Imperial station hidden inside an asteroid field where alien forces coordinated fleet movements. Dressed in captured armor, Yuna and her soldiers moved quietly through dark metal halls while alarms echoed in the distance. They planted explosives near the station's central reactor, while alien guards searched desperately for intruders. One young soldier named Jiho looked terrified as footsteps approached nearby. Yuna grabbed his shoulder firmly. "Stay focused," she whispered. "Fear gets people killed." Moments later, the station exploded into fire behind them as their shuttle escaped through the asteroid field. Across nearby sectors, Imperial fleets suddenly lost communication with each other. Confused commanders crashed into their own formations while hidden human ships attacked isolated targets one by one. Vaelor watched the disaster unfold with growing anger. Humanity was not fighting like normal enemies. They attacked supply chains instead of warships. They destroyed transport routes and vanished into darkness before Imperial forces could strike back. Entire sectors of the Empire began suffering shortages because human raids never stopped. On conquered worlds, alien citizens started hearing rumors that the Empire could actually lose. Rebellions slowly appeared across distant colonies. Slave populations attacked Imperial guards while underground resistance groups secretly contacted humanity. Jay realized the war was becoming larger than Earth itself. One evening, while reviewing battle reports aboard Black Dawn, he received a message from a rebel leader on a conquered mining planet. The transmission showed exhausted civilians hiding inside underground tunnels. Their leader, a frightened woman named Nari, begged for help. "The Empire kills anyone suspected of supporting humans," she said. "Please, if Earth still stands, don't abandon us." Jay stared at the message for a long moment before turning toward his officers. "Prepare rescue ships," he ordered quietly. "We're bringing them home." Days later, Yuna led another dangerous operation into Imperial territory. Human Marines stormed prison camps where alien soldiers held thousands of captured civilians from conquered worlds. Explosions shook the camps as guards fell under heavy fire. Prisoners watched in disbelief as human soldiers broke open cells and carried wounded survivors onto evacuation ships. For the first time in centuries, someone was fighting back against the Empire and winning. But the cost of war was growing heavier every day. Earth itself remained under constant attack. Alien ships bombarded orbital defenses while panic spread across major cities. Food shortages began appearing in crowded refugee zones. Families slept inside underground shelters while soldiers prepared for invasion. Jay visited Seoul during a short return to Earth and walked through crowded medical centers filled with wounded civilians. Children played quietly beside hospital beds while doctors rushed between patients without rest. One elderly man grabbed Jay's arm as he passed. "Can we really survive this?" the man asked weakly. Jay looked around at the exhausted faces surrounding him. He wanted to promise victory, but the truth was uncertain. "We're still here," he answered softly. "That means they haven't beaten us yet." Meanwhile, far beyond Earth, the Empire prepared its deadliest weapon. Vaelor ordered the construction of a massive planetary destroyer near the Imperial border worlds. The machine was larger than entire cities and powered by ancient energy technology stolen from forgotten civilizations. Its purpose was simple. Earth would burn as an example to every species that dared resist the Empire. But human spies learned about the weapon before it was completed. Yuna brought the information directly to Jay aboard Black Dawn. The hologram of the giant destroyer glowed between them while officers watched nervously. "If this reaches Earth," one commander whispered, "the war is over." Jay remained silent for several seconds before finally speaking. "Then we destroy it before launch." The mission became humanity's boldest attack yet. Hundreds of stealth ships moved through deep space toward the hidden shipyard where the destroyer was being built. Human fleets avoided direct battle, slipping past patrols while electronic warfare systems blinded enemy sensors. When they finally reached the construction site, even hardened soldiers were shocked by the size of the Imperial project. The unfinished destroyer floated above a burning gas giant surrounded by thousands of workers and defense ships. Jay knew failure would mean extinction for Earth. Human bombers launched first, striking shield generators around the shipyard while Marines boarded nearby stations. Chaos exploded across the construction zone. Alien commanders screamed orders as human ships appeared from the darkness like ghosts. Yuna personally led boarding teams deep into the destroyer itself. Inside the unfinished weapon, heavy fighting filled dark corridors with fire and smoke. Human soldiers pushed forward room by room while alarms echoed endlessly through the giant structure. Yuna reached the reactor core with only a handful of surviving Marines beside her. The reactor pulsed with unstable energy powerful enough to destroy planets. "Charges set," Jiho reported nervously while explosions shook the walls around them. Yuna looked toward the escape route as enemy soldiers closed in fast. "Move!" she shouted. The human team barely escaped aboard their shuttle before the destroyer exploded behind them. A wave of blinding light consumed the entire shipyard. Half-built warships, stations, and defense fleets vanished instantly inside the massive explosion. The shockwave tore through nearby Imperial forces while burning debris scattered across space. From the bridge of Black Dawn, Jay watched the destruction silently. Humanity had just destroyed the Empire's greatest military project. Across the galaxy, rebellion spread even faster after news of the attack leaked through underground networks. For the first time in generations, conquered worlds believed freedom might actually be possible. But inside his throne room aboard the Imperial flagship, King Vaelor no longer looked amused or arrogant. His eyes burned with hatred as he stared at the burning remains of the destroyed shipyard floating across his screen. Human fleets had humiliated him again. Entire sectors of his empire were now unstable because of one species that refused to surrender. Slowly, Vaelor turned toward his generals. "Gather every fleet," he said with deadly calm. "I will crush Earth myself." Far away, hidden deep in the darkness beyond Pluto, massive Imperial warships began appearing one after another until the stars themselves disappeared behind the endless armada moving toward humanity. The massive Imperial armada moved through deep space like a living wall of steel, covering entire regions of the stars as it advanced toward Earth. Thousands of warships traveled together under the direct command of King Vaelor himself. Entire moons shook as the giant fleet passed nearby, and conquered worlds watched silently, believing humanity's final moments had arrived. Inside the command bridge of the Black Dawn, Captain J. Park stared at the growing fleet on the main screen while officers worked around him without rest. No one spoke much anymore. The war had become larger and deadlier than anyone imagined. Earth's defenses were exhausted, supplies were running low, and human fleets had already lost countless ships during months of constant fighting. Still, humanity refused to surrender. Jay looked toward Commander Yuna Kim standing beside the tactical displays. If they reach Earth with that fleet, millions will die before the first day ends, he said quietly. Yuna nodded without fear. Then we stop them before they arrive. Across hidden bases inside the asteroid belts, human commanders prepared a desperate plan. Humanity could not defeat the Armada through direct battle, so they decided to tear the Empire apart from the inside. Rebel groups across alien territory had grown stronger after every human victory. Entire colonies now openly fought against imperial rule. Human agents secretly armed resistance fighters while stealth ships carried weapons, medicine, and supplies into occupied systems. The galaxy was beginning to burn with rebellion. Vaelor's empire still looked powerful from the outside, but inside it was cracking apart. On the mining world of Kareth, alien workers attacked imperial soldiers and seized control of defense stations. On another colony, slaves destroyed fuel depots used by the imperial navy. The empire suddenly faced war on every side at once. Vaelor responded with pure brutality. Entire cities were executed publicly to stop rebellion from spreading further. Broadcasts of mass destruction filled communication channels across nearby systems. The alien king wanted fear to return. Instead, the violence only strengthened resistance. Humanity had shown the galaxy that the empire could bleed, and now fear was slowly turning into anger everywhere. Meanwhile, Yuna led another dangerous mission deep into enemy territory after receiving secret information from rebel spies. Hidden beneath an imperial fortress world was an ancient archive containing records of every civilization the empire had destroyed for thousands of years. Human leaders believed the information could unite even more worlds against Vaelor if the truth became public. Yuna's team infiltrated the heavily guarded planet using captured imperial transports. The surface of the world looked dead and cold, covered in giant factories and black towers stretching endlessly beneath dark clouds. Imperial patrol ships filled the skies while massive guns pointed toward space from every mountain. Jiho walked beside Yuna through crowded industrial streets while disguised as imperial workers. "This place feels cursed," he whispered nervously. Yuna silently agreed. Everywhere they looked, exhausted prisoners worked under armed guards while smoke filled the sky from giant machines. The Empire did not build civilizations, consumed them. Deep beneath the fortress world, Yuna finally reached the hidden archive alongside her soldiers. What they discovered inside shocked even hardened veterans. Millions of recorded files showed entire species erased from existence after refusing imperial rule. Cities burned, planets destroyed, children executed beside their families. The Empire had hidden its crimes for centuries by destroying historical records after every conquest. Yuna stood silently while screens displayed endless horrors from thousands of years of war. Jiho looked pale as he watched one recording after another. "How many worlds did they kill?" he asked softly. Yuna answered without emotion. "Too many." Human hackers copied the archive and transmitted it across rebel networks throughout the galaxy before imperial forces detected the intrusion. Suddenly the truth about Vaelor's empire spread everywhere at once. Citizens who once believed the empire brought peace now saw its true face. Entire systems erupted into rebellion overnight. Imperial governors disappeared. Military outposts were attacked from within. Some alien soldiers even abandoned their posts rather than continue fighting for the empire. Inside his throne chamber, Vaelor smashed a servant against the wall after learning about the leaked archive. Rage filled the massive room while terrified generals lowered their heads in silence. "Humans spread poison through my empire," Vaelor growled. "Then we will erase them from history." He ordered the Armada to increase speed toward Earth immediately. But the faster the empire moved, the more vulnerable it became. Human fleets waited in hidden positions across deep space, striking weakened supply convoys again and again. Imperial ships began suffering fuel shortages and communication failures as sabotage spread through nearby sectors. Entire formations became separated from the main armada. Jay took advantage of every mistake. Human warships attacked isolated enemy groups with brutal efficiency before vanishing back into darkness. Battles exploded across dozens of systems at once while the Empire struggled to hold itself together. Still, the main armada continued advancing toward Earth. The closer it came, the more desperate humanity became. Earth's orbit filled with defensive stations, minefields, and hidden weapons platforms. Civilians prepared underground shelters while soldiers dug defensive lines across major cities. Jay visited his family briefly during a stop in Seoul before returning to battle. His younger brother June waited with thousands of other civilians inside an underground shelter beneath the city. The room smelled of fear and exhaustion. Children slept beside packed emergency supplies while distant alarms echoed through the tunnels above. June grabbed Jay's arm before he left. "Promise me Earth survives this," he said quietly. Jay looked at the worried faces around him. "I'll do everything I can," he answered, though he was no longer sure victory was possible. Days later, the first ships of Vaelor's armada finally entered the outer edges of the solar system. Human fleets moved immediately to intercept them near Jupiter. The battle that followed became the largest in human history. Thousands of ships collided across the darkness while explosions lit entire regions of space like burning stars. Human rail cannons ripped through alien cruisers while imperial plasma weapons shattered entire squadrons in seconds. Jay commanded the Black Dawn from the center of the battlefield, giving rapid orders while alarms screamed around him. "Enemy carriers moving toward the flank," an officer shouted. "Target their engines," Jay replied instantly. "Don't let them regroup." Nearby, Yuna led boarding teams directly onto enemy warships during the chaos. Human Marines fought through burning corridors filled with smoke and blood, while explosions shook entire ships apart. The Empire still possessed overwhelming numbers, but humans fought with terrifying determination. Every battle became savage and personal. Alien commanders began fearing close combat against human soldiers because they refused to retreat even when heavily outnumbered. The fighting near Jupiter lasted for almost 2 full days without stopping. Millions died across both sides while burning wreckage drifted endlessly through space. In the end, humanity managed to slow the armada, but not stop it completely. Vaelor still pushed forward toward Earth with thousands of surviving warships behind him. Yet something had changed. The Empire no longer looked invincible. Too many ships had been lost. Too many rebellions had erupted across imperial territory. And now entire alien fleets were beginning to surrender instead of fighting. One imperial admiral shocked the galaxy by publicly laying down his weapons and broadcasting a message to every system under imperial control. "The Empire built its throne on endless graves," he declared. "Humanity fights not for conquest, but survival." After the message spread, more defections followed. Vaelor responded by executing loyal officers suspected of weakness. Fear returned to the Imperial fleet, but loyalty continued fading. Meanwhile, human intelligence finally discovered the location of the Imperial capital world, hidden near the core regions of the galaxy. Jay stared at the hologram showing the heart of the Empire while commanders gathered around him. If humanity could strike the capital, the entire Empire might collapse. But reaching it would require passing through the largest defenses ever built. Yuna folded her arms as she studied the map carefully. "If we cut off the head," she said quietly, "the body dies." Jay looked toward the stars outside the bridge window where the burning remains of battle still floated through space. Earth was wounded. Humanity was exhausted. But the Empire was finally afraid. Slowly, Jay gave the order that would change the war forever. Human fleets would leave the solar system for the first time and carry the fight directly into the heart of Vaelor's empire. Human fleets crossed deep space toward the heart of the empire while rebellion and war spread behind them like wildfire. Entire imperial sectors had fallen into chaos after the truth about Vaelor's crimes reached the galaxy. Supply lines collapsed, governors disappeared, and more alien soldiers abandoned the empire every day. But even with the empire weakening, the road to the capital world remained deadly. Massive defense stations guarded every route leading toward the Imperial core, and countless warships still protected Vaelor's throne. Inside the bridge of the Black Dawn, Captain J. Park stood silently beside Commander Yuna Kim, while stars drifted slowly across the giant viewing screen. Both looked exhausted after years of war. Their uniforms carried burn marks and damage from endless battles, and dark circles filled their eyes from too many sleepless nights. Yet neither of them planned to stop now. Earth had sacrificed too much already. Around them, human fleets prepared for the final assault while rebel forces from dozens of liberated worlds joined the attack. Ships from species once enslaved by the Empire now flew beside humanity under one shared goal: destroy the throne that had ruled through fear for centuries. Jay looked across the gathered fleets on the tactical display and quietly said, "This ends here." Far ahead, the Imperial capital system slowly appeared from the darkness. It was unlike anything human eyes had ever seen before. Giant artificial rings surrounded entire planets while massive defense platforms floated like steel moons around the capital world. Endless fleets guarded the system, forming layers of protection around Vaelor's palace planet. The capital itself glowed beneath clouds of gold and silver lights, a world built from the wealth stolen from conquered civilizations across the galaxy. But beneath the beauty hid fear. Civilians crowded evacuation zones while Imperial soldiers rushed through streets preparing for invasion. Rumors of humanity's approach had already reached every corner of the Empire. People whispered about humans like they were monsters born from war itself. They said humans never stopped fighting, never surrendered, and never forgot the dead. Vaelor used those rumors to strengthen fear among his people. But even inside the capital, many had begun doubting their king. The first battle began near the outer defense ring. Thousands of human and rebel ships slammed into Imperial fleets guarding the system entrance. Explosions lit the darkness as giant battleships broke apart under heavy fire. Human rail cannons tore through alien formations while stealth bombers slipped between enemy lines to destroy shield generators. Jay commanded the assault from Black Dawn while alarms screamed constantly across the bridge. "Left flank collapsing," an officer shouted. "Send the rebel cruisers to support them," Jay answered immediately. "Keep pressure on the defense ring." Nearby, Yuna led assault carriers directly toward one of the giant orbital stations protecting the capital. Human marines crashed through the station's hull using boarding pods while heavy gunfire echoed through narrow metal corridors. Alien defenders fought desperately, knowing the capital itself would become vulnerable if the station fell. Smoke filled the halls as explosions shook the entire structure. Jiho moved beside Yuna while carrying a plasma rifle covered in blood and ash. "They're pulling back," he shouted over the noise. Yuna looked ahead toward the central reactor chamber. "Then don't give them time to regroup." Hours later, the station exploded into fire behind them as human forces escaped moments before destruction. One defense ring after another slowly collapsed under the endless assault. The Empire still fought fiercely, but the fear that once made its soldiers strong was disappearing. Many surrendered instead of dying for Vaelor. Others simply fled. Meanwhile, chaos spread across the capital world itself. Massive crowds filled the streets while emergency sirens echoed across towering cities. Citizens pushed toward shelters while Imperial officers tried desperately to restore order. Some even turned against the government openly, attacking military checkpoints and freeing prisoners from labor camps. Humanity's arrival had shattered the illusion that the Empire could never fall. Deep inside his giant palace fortress, King Vaelor watched the battle unfold with growing fury. His once perfect empire was collapsing around him. Generals argued inside the throne chamber while explosions from distant orbital strikes shook the walls. One advisor begged Vaelor to flee the capital before human fleets reached the surface. The alien king slowly stood from his throne, towering over everyone in the room. "I built this empire with blood," he growled. "I will not run from animals crawling out of one insignificant world." He ordered every remaining fleet to defend the palace at all costs. Above the capital world, the final orbital battle became a nightmare of destruction. Burning ships crashed into one another while wreckage filled the skies like falling stars. Human fleets pushed closer to the planet despite enormous losses. Jay watched entire squadrons disappear under heavy fire, yet the attack never slowed. Human soldiers knew there would be no second chance if they failed now. Finally, after hours of brutal combat, the last orbital defense platform fell silent. The path to the capital world stood open. Thousands of human and rebel ships descended through the atmosphere together while anti-aircraft fire rose from the surface below. Giant cities stretched endlessly beneath dark clouds lit by fire and explosions. Imperial soldiers defended every street while civilians fled through collapsing towers and burning roads. Human drop ships landed across the capital as ground battles erupted everywhere at once. Jay landed with frontline soldiers near the outer districts of the palace city. Smoke covered the skyline while shattered buildings burned around them. Rebel fighters and human marines pushed street by street through heavy resistance. The Empire's elite guards fought harder than anyone else in the war, refusing to surrender even as the city collapsed around them. Yuna led special forces toward the palace fortress hidden at the center of the capital. Giant walls surrounded the massive structure, while heavy cannons fired continuously from its towers. Human bombers struck the defenses repeatedly until parts of the walls finally collapsed under the assault. Marines rushed through the openings while explosions shook the ground beneath them. Inside the fortress, fighting became savage and desperate. Narrow halls turned into killing zones filled with smoke, broken metal, and bodies. Jiho was wounded during the assault when plasma fire struck his shoulder, but he kept moving beside Yuna through the burning corridors. "We're close," Yuna told him while checking her weapon. Vaelor is still inside. Deeper within the fortress, Imperial guards made their final stand before the throne chamber. Human soldiers pushed forward through endless gunfire while the palace slowly crumbled from orbital strikes above. Finally, after hours of brutal fighting, Jay and Yuna reached the giant golden doors leading into the throne room itself. The doors exploded inward under heavy charges, revealing Vaelor standing beside his throne surrounded by his last remaining guards. The alien king still wore dark armor marked with the symbols of conquered worlds. Even now, with his empire collapsing around him, he looked proud and furious instead of afraid. "You destroy everything you touch," Vaelor roared as his guards opened fire. The final fight inside the throne room became fast and violent. Human soldiers battled the last Imperial defenders while explosions shattered the giant chamber. One by one, Vaelor's guards fell until only the king remained standing. Even wounded, the massive alien ruler fought with terrifying strength, throwing soldiers aside and crushing metal with his bare hands. Jay finally faced Vaelor directly near the broken throne while smoke filled the room. "This war ended the moment you attacked Earth," Jay said coldly. Vaelor lunged forward in rage, but Yuna fired first, striking the king's armor and sending him crashing onto the floor. Human soldiers quickly surrounded him while heavy restraints locked around his arms and legs. Silence filled the ruined throne room. The Empire's king had fallen. Outside, news spread across the capital within minutes. Imperial soldiers began throwing down their weapons while civilians stared in disbelief at giant public screens showing Vaelor captured alive. Then came the moment that changed the galaxy forever. Human soldiers dragged the defeated king through the burning streets of his own capital while millions watched. The same ruler who once demanded entire civilizations kneel before him was now covered in ash and chains, forced to walk through the ruins created by his own war. Civilians lined the destroyed streets in stunned silence as Vaelor stumbled past collapsed towers and burning monuments. Some cried. Others simply watched without speaking. The Empire's fear had finally died. Yet as Jay walked beside the captured king through the shattered city, he looked around at the endless destruction and wondered how much of humanity had been lost during the war. The fall of King Vaelor spread across the galaxy faster than any battle before it. On thousands of worlds, people gathered around giant public screens to watch the once feared ruler being dragged through the ruined streets of his own capital. For centuries, the Empire had ruled through terror, forcing entire civilizations to kneel before its fleets. Now the throne had fallen, and fear began disappearing from the galaxy for the very first time. Across liberated worlds, prisoners walked free from labor camps, while imperial banners were torn down from government buildings and burned in public squares. Some people celebrated wildly in the streets, while others simply stood in silence, unable to believe the empire was truly defeated. Yet even after the war ended, peace did not arrive easily. The galaxy had spent too long living under violence. Entire systems were destroyed, trade routes had collapsed, and millions of survivors were left starving inside ruined cities. Human fleets quickly shifted from war to rescue operations, delivering food, medicine, and supplies to worlds abandoned during the chaos. Captain J. Park stood aboard the Black Dawn watching transport ships leave the imperial capital every hour carrying refugees towards safer colonies. The stars outside the bridge looked peaceful now, but Jay knew the scars of war would remain for generations. Commander Yuna Kim entered the bridge quietly and handed him another report. More imperial officers surrendered near the outer sectors, she said. But some warlords are refusing to stand down. Jay nodded slowly. He expected that. The empire was broken, but many loyal commanders still controlled isolated fleets across deep space. Some wanted revenge for Vaelor's defeat. Others simply refused to believe the war was over. Humanity could not relax yet. Days later, Jay traveled through the ruined capital world alongside humanitarian teams and engineers helping civilians rebuild destroyed districts. The once beautiful city now looked like a graveyard of collapsed towers and burned streets. Smoke still rose from shattered buildings while rescue workers searched endlessly through debris for survivors. Alien civilians watched humans carefully as they passed through the ruins. Many had spent their entire lives believing humans were savage monsters from a primitive world. Instead, they saw soldiers carrying injured children from broken buildings and sharing supplies with frightened families. One small alien boy stood beside the remains of a destroyed market while holding his younger sister close. Jay stopped in front of them and quietly handed the boy a food pack. The child looked confused. "Why are you helping us?" he asked nervously. Jay looked around at the ruined city for a long moment before answering. "Because someone should have helped us too." Meanwhile, far beneath the capital city, King Vaelor remained imprisoned inside a heavily guarded military facility built from the remains of the old Imperial Command Center. Thick energy barriers surrounded his cell while armed soldiers watched him constantly. The once proud ruler now sat alone in silence, wearing simple prison restraints instead of royal armor. For the first time in centuries, Vaelor had no armies, no throne, and no fear to control others. Yet even imprisoned, he remained dangerous. Some surviving imperial loyalists still saw him as a godlike figure and planned attacks across nearby systems hoping to restart the war. Yuna personally led missions against these remaining warlords during the months after the Empire's collapse. Human strike teams hunted hidden fleets and destroyed secret military bases before loyalists could regroup. One operation took Yuna deep into a frozen outer system where an Imperial commander named Rakan had gathered thousands of surviving soldiers for a final stand. Massive warships floated above icy moons while loyalist propaganda broadcasts filled nearby sectors with promises of revenge against humanity. Yuna's fleet attacked without warning. Human stealth bombers crippled the warlords' defenses while rebel ships from liberated worlds joined the assault from every side. The battle was fierce, but short. Most of Rakan's soldiers surrendered once they realized Vaelor would never return to power. After the victory, Yuna stood inside the destroyed command center while captured officers were escorted away in chains. Jiho walked beside her, older and more tired than when the war began years earlier. "Do you think this fighting will ever truly end?" he asked quietly. Yuna looked toward the frozen stars outside the broken windows. "Maybe not completely," she answered, "but at least now people have a chance to live without fear." Back on Earth, celebrations filled cities across the planet after humanity officially announced the end of the war. Crowds gathered in Seoul, New York, Lagos, Tokyo, and countless other cities as giant screens replayed the fall of the empire again and again. Fireworks lit the skies while families reunited after years of separation and fear. Yet many celebrations carried sadness as well. Too many people had died during the war. Entire colonies had vanished. Millions of soldiers never returned home. Memorials quickly appeared across Earth honoring the fallen. Jay visited one such memorial alone late at night after returning to Seoul. Thousands of names stretched across black stone walls beneath soft lights. Friends, soldiers, civilians, and children lost during the invasion were remembered there forever. Jay stood silently in front of the wall while rain slowly fell around him. He remembered the fear on the first day the alien fleet appeared above Earth. He remembered burning ships near Saturn, destroyed colonies, and cities turned into battlefields. Humanity survived, but survival had changed everyone. A few weeks later, leaders from liberated worlds gathered on the former imperial capital for the largest tribunal in galactic history. Representatives from hundreds of civilizations arrived to witness the trial of King Vaelor. The massive courtroom had once been part of the Empire's Senate Hall where conquered worlds were forced to obey imperial law. Now the same chamber was filled with survivors demanding justice. Jay and Yuna stood among the delegates while armored guards escorted Vaelor into the room. The alien king looked weaker than before, but his eyes still carried traces of pride and anger. As the tribunal began, evidence of the Empire's crimes was shown publicly across the galaxy. Recordings from destroyed civilizations filled giant screens. Survivors gave emotional testimonies about worlds burned under imperial rule. Families described mass executions, slavery, and genocide committed by the Empire for centuries. Even some former imperial officers confessed openly to their crimes after realizing the truth could no longer stay hidden. Vaelor remained silent through most of the tribunal, staring coldly at the evidence surrounding him. Finally, one survivor stood before him and asked the question millions across the galaxy wanted answered. Why? The chamber became completely silent. Vaelor slowly raised his head and looked around the room filled with survivors from worlds his empire had destroyed. Because fear built obedience, he answered quietly. And obedience built empire. His words spread across every surviving system in the galaxy. But instead of fear, they only created disgust. After weeks of testimony and evidence, the tribunal finally reached its decision. Many worlds demanded Vaelor's public execution. Others wanted him tortured for the suffering he caused. Yet humanity refused both demands. Jay stood before the gathered delegates and addressed the entire galaxy. If we answer cruelty with cruelty, he said firmly, then this war changes nothing. Instead of execution, Vaelor was sentenced to spend the rest of his life imprisoned while the empire he built slowly disappeared around him. The decision shocked many civilizations. They expected humanity to seek revenge after everything they had suffered. Instead, humans chose justice over hatred. Slowly, the galaxy began rebuilding itself from the ashes of war. Former slave worlds joined together in a new alliance led partly by Earth. Trade routes reopened, refugees returned home, and reconstruction efforts spread across devastated systems. Human fleets no longer traveled as conquerors, but as protectors helping maintain peace between recovering worlds. Years later, Jay stood once more aboard the Black Dawn, while orbiting Earth beneath peaceful stars. The ship that once carried humanity through endless war now guarded a fragile but hopeful future. Yuna joined him quietly near the bridge window as they looked down at the glowing planet below. "Do you think they'll remember what happened here?" she asked softly. Jay watched the blue world turning slowly beneath them and thought about the ruins of Vaelor's empire scattered across the galaxy like broken monuments to pride and cruelty. "They will," he answered, "because humanity survived when no one believed we could." Far away on the abandoned imperial capital, the old throne room still stood broken and empty beneath silent skies, a permanent reminder to the galaxy that the species once called weak had dragged a king through the ruins of the empire he created.